Welcome to a brand new episode of Law and Batting Order. I'm your host, Tony Iliakostas. Here are some quick hits from the past 2 weeks. Dust off those jerseys and whip out the chips and guacamole, boys and girls, because football season is back. On Wednesday, the Super Bowl champion New York Giants squared off against their division rival, the Dallas Cowboys, in a bout for the ages. Unfortunately, the Giants were unable to secure a win as the Cowboys beat the Giants 24-17. But the bulk of Week 1 games will be played today, so hopefully all you football fans out there will enjoy the beginning of the new football season. Major developments have taken place relating to the New Orleans Saints Bounty Fund. If you've been following the case from the beginning, you may recall that NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell suspended 4 defensive players who allegedly played key roles in the bounty fund: team captain Jonathan Vilma, Will Smith, Scott Fujita, and Anthony Hargrove, with the most notable punishment going to Vilma, who was suspended for the entire 2012 season. On Friday, a 3-member appeals panel overturned Commissioner Goodell's punishment for all 4 players, thus showing that the commissioner lacks full autonomy. The appeals board argued that the punishments were overturned after they ruled that Commissioner Goodell lacked the authority to punish these players for receiving money. They further commented that Goodell should be responsible only for punishing players who perform conduct detrimental to the sport. This appeal is quite a win for these players, as they have fought tooth and nail to have their punishment overturned. Summer is winding down rather quickly, which means we're closer to October baseball. Huge headlines are emerging for playoff contenders as we enter the last month of the season. In the AL East, the Yankees are facing stiff competition with the Baltimore Orioles as both teams are vying for the first place lead. Remember that back in July, the Yankees had a commanding 10-game lead, so hopefully the team won't free fall and lose out in an opportunity to compete in October. Over in the NL, the biggest headline takes place in Washington, D.C., as the Nationals are prepared to shut down their ace, Stephen Strasburg, for the remainder of the season and playoffs. Strasburg entered this season fully healthy after recovering from Tommy John surgery all of last season. The Nationals placed an innings limit on Strasburg at the beginning of the season, and the team is not backing out of that plan. A lot more games have to be played, but it will be certainly interesting to see what September has in store for baseball fans. Today's Order in the Court will be discussing Chad Johnson and breach of contract. Over the offseason, wide receiver Chad Johnson signed with his hometown team, the Miami Dolphins, in an effort to revive his career. However, after participating in 1 week of preseason activity, Chad Johnson was arrested after he headbutted his wife. It was clear that the Dolphins were not going to take Johnson's domestic violence action lightly, so the Dolphins organization responded by cutting the wide receiver. What was more alarming was the reason the Dolphins gave Johnson for releasing him. If you've been watching HBO's documentary series Hard Knocks, Training Camp with the Miami Dolphins, you saw an exclusive sit-down meeting between Johnson and new Dolphins coach Joe Philbin. Philbin said that Johnson's career and skill set was not on the same page as the Dolphins organization, and that the team was planning on going in a different direction. However, being a law school student, my hunch tells me that the Dolphins released Chad Johnson because he breached a clause in his contract. Breach of contract is one of the fundamental issues in contract law, and in today's episode, I'll talk about how Chad Johnson's headbutting behavior led to a breach of contract claim that ultimately led to his release. I'd like to make a disclaimer that the following account is merely a fictitious scenario that I'm painting in order to illustrate the legal concept known as breach of contract. In no way, shape, or form is this being stated for the truth. As we have discussed before in Law and Batting Order, a contract consists of 3 elements: an offer, an acceptance, and a consideration. An offer is a manifestation or intent to enter into a bargain that is clear, explicit, and definite, which leaves nothing open for negotiation, such that an objectively reasonable person would agree to that bargain. Acceptance is an assent to carry out the terms set forth in the offer. Consideration is a bargain for exchange such that there is something of legal value and there is a detriment to the promisor, the person who promises, or a benefit to the promisee, the person being promised something. For the sake of simplicity, let's assume that all of these elements were satisfied in the case of Chad Johnson, since he was an active member of the Dolphins roster prior to his arrest. Now, the concept of breach of contract is a fairly simple one. According to American Jurisprudence 2nd, Section 590, it states the following: a party that is unable to perform his or her part of the contract is not entitled to the performance of corresponding dependent promises by the other party. The restatement second of contract, section 241, also outlines the elements of breach of contract. In relevant part, breach of contract occurs under the following circumstances: the likelihood that the party failing to perform or to perform will cure his failure, taking account of all the circumstances including any reasonable assurances, and the extent to which the behavior of the party failing to perform or to offer to perform comports with the standards of good faith and fair dealing. The bottom line is that if a party does not abide by the express word in a contract, he has violated his contract, thus causing a breach in such contract. In the case of Chad Johnson, it is likely that there was a clause in his contract stating that in addition to helping the team produce wins, he had to be under good behavior. While Chad Johnson has never been arrested while he was a member of the NFL, he has caused quite the ruckus for his controversial touchdown performances and his overly dramatic behavior off the field. Perhaps the Dolphins felt obliged to set out clear conditions for Chad Johnson that stated that he must be on his best behavior while he is in a Dolphins uniform, since he raises a liability red flag. This most likely includes a clause in Johnson's contract stating that he must stay out of trouble with the law. However, this condition is unknown to us, but based on how controversial he has been throughout his entire career, I believe such a condition existed in his contract. If this is the case, then we have clear evidence of breach of contract. It was up to Chad Johnson to live up to his end of the bargain, and that was to make a good name for the Dolphins and to stay out of trouble. The Dolphins were already fulfilling their part of the agreement by paying him for his performance on the field. We know that Chad Johnson is fully capable of performing on the field since he has amassed over 1,000 yards 7 times in his 10-year career. However, it was Chad Johnson's duty to be a spokesperson and a leader for this team. Because he headbutted his wife and because this story was intensely amplified on national television, it seems that the Dolphins felt pressured to terminate Chad Johnson's contract. Johnson likely promised to be on his best behavior, but clearly we know this didn't happen. Otherwise, he would have still been in Miami. And this is how breach of contract applies in the case of Chad Johnson. That's the show. Leave all your comments down below and be sure to visit Law and Batting Order at lawandbattingorder.com as well as on Facebook and Twitter. Take care, guys.